If you're an IMG about to take the CBSE, you probably already know the pressure is completely different. Different systems, different timelines, and for most of us, very different and limited support. I recently took the CBSE and I was successful on my first attempt, scoring in the top 20th percentile. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly how I studied, the mindset that helped me stay focused and consistent, and what I did to avoid the common traps and pitfalls that can hold a lot of us IMGs back. Please stay focused and let's do this. If there's one thing I've learned in my journey so far through medicine, is that there's so many ways to do this and still end up being successful. But in this video, I'm only going to talk about the things that specifically worked for me. I can't say enough how important it is to have a very strong foundation in your basic sciences. If you think that your dedicated period is going to be enough to relearn everything you did in the past 2 years of medical school, I have a house and room to sell you for a lot of dollars. Basically, for the CBSE, the first and most important thing is to have put in the work in your first 2 years of medical school, which means no lollygagging, no dilly-dallying, but actually having an everyday focused preparation and content build up from day one up until the end of your second year. In this couple steps, I will explain exactly how I studied. The very first step, I focused more on active recall than passive learning. I started by making sure every single question I did, I fully understood both why I got the answer right or wrong, and what every other option means for each question. This includes also writing things out in my own words, especially the explanations, and making sure they made sense to me. Each time I read a question, I would ask myself, what does this mean to me? What does this lab value mean to me? What does this term mean to me? What does this picture of a histo mean to me? And rather than just overlooking things, have a rough idea in my own mind of what each things mean, and then move on to answering the question. No matter what test banks you use, while I do believe specifically that the NBMEs are the best forms that are most identical to the CBSE, the goal is still, regardless of each test bank, to fully dissect every practice question that you do, both understanding why you picked the question, why the other options are wrong, what the test makers are going for, and what concept they're trying to test for in each question. Step 2. I believe in early self-assessments. Now, most people have a schedule where they did an MBME every 2 to 3 weeks. I don't think you should wait that long. It might sound crazy, but I did an MBME every 3 to 4 days. Usually, I would sit down for one full day and take an entire MBME in a row in test-like conditions, putting my phone on DND, having no distractions, and just taking a bit of a break in between the first 100 and the last 100. And after this was done, I would grade that test for the day, just to get a rough idea of where I was. And then moving forward, I focused on reviewing every single question that was either incorrect, or even if I got it correctly, that I wasn't quite sure of how I got there. I believe the key is to be brutally honest with yourself and first see exactly where you stand, and then how you can improve and work from there based on what concepts you keep getting right or wrong, and whether or not you're actually going into the ideas of what the test makers are trying to get you to answer. For each day, this was my daily breakdown. I would wake up and be set up at my study station before 8 a.m. in the morning. I'd have a cup of coffee and I would work on my questions up until whenever I was done. And I would grade the questions like I mentioned earlier. And after grading them, I was done for the day. The review didn't happen until the next day. I would then go to the gym and have a good gym session, a workout, because you have to stay balanced, I promise you. And after I was done with the gym, I would go home and make sure I got enough rest, because at the end of each 200 question block, 50 times 4, your head is mush. I promise you. You probably don't even know your middle name at that point. So I made sure to balance both doing the questions as well as getting a good gym session in 5 days a week. On the days of the review, which is after I'd done the 200 questions, I would take my time and go through every question, both right and wrong, especially focusing on my thought process during the questions, and for the ones I wasn't too sure of, why I wasn't sure about them, and using those to fill in the blanks and the gaps in which I might have some knowledge gaps or lack of understanding of the concept that the test makers were trying to test. I believe that the sheer volume I did not only exposed me to different kinds of questions, but allowed me to reinforce the heavily tested high yield concepts. Because I believe when you see something 4 or 5 times, you get better at identifying exactly what it is and what they're going for in the questions. Obviously, these questions aren't going to be exactly the same, but I think when you see a concept over and over again, your brain actually tries to solidify that information. I treated my prep period like a job, a full-time job. Again, I would be up and set up by 8 a.m. And for the most part, I would go on all the way until 5 p.m., which was my usual cutoff time. Some days that extended to about 6 p.m. And then I would cut it off, no more studying for the day, and made sure I go to the gym to clear my head out by lifting weights or by running. I think having that balance really helped me stay on track and focused towards the end. And by the time I was ready for CBSE, I had done this for a period of 3 weeks straight, with no breaks, even on the weekends. One thing I want to talk about before I mention resources is how important it is to have a mindset of a successful exam taker. I had always believed that no matter what happened, I would pass the CBSE on the first attempt. Not trying to be cocky, but I based it on how much work I had done prior, the consistency and the dedication that I exhibited during my dedicated period, and the focus that kept me through every day doing the same thing, regardless of whatever else I wanted to do for a 3-week period without stopping. At the end of my dedicated, not only were my scores in the practice MBMEs going upwards, but again, the confidence I had built up over this time was immense for me. No matter who you are, no matter how intelligent you might be, it is very natural to experience some nervousness and anxiety while taking these standardized tests. But trust me, you have to go in there believing that you're going to pass. If you don't have that mindset, it's going to be very hard to not only stay focused when you see stuff that you don't understand, but also very difficult to maintain the kind of composure that you're going to need under such stressful test-taking situations. So moving on to talk about resources that I felt were very helpful for me, I can't stress this enough. Melman Medical, especially if you have a solid content base. He has a website, which I will link in the description below. And in this website, he provides a lot of free high-yield documents based on systems that you can use to help yourself both review information and understand how MBME wants to test you on certain things. This is not a sponsored plug, by the way. We've never interacted at all. But I'm saying that it really helped me be able to not only focus my mind on what exactly I needed to know for the MBME and CBSE, but also allowed me to not overly go too deep into the weeds about these very highly detailed concepts. And I think that is a lifesaver. If you're about to take the CBSE, here's what I recommend. You pick 1 to 2 resources and stick to them. There's no need to flip-flop. It is not helpful at all. I suggest one of those resources be Melman's free high-yield documents. If you have the money for it, you can purchase this Anki, but I don't believe you need that because the high-yield documents on their own are such gold, basically gold. You can use that in conjunction to the free MBMEs that you can find online if you're resourceful enough. And if you aren't, unfortunately, you might have to pay for the MBME forms. I recommend doing any one from form 15, all the way up to 31. If you do an MBME every 2 to 3 days and review them, which takes a long time, I promise you, but it's so important because you need to know what are you getting wrong and why are you getting it wrong. And then incorporate content review with the high yield Melman documents, and occasionally sprinkling a little bit of UWorld or AMBOSS or Bootcamp just to see a different style of questions. You're going to be so well-rounded and you're going to be absolutely prepared to take down that beast. I also recommend building a study schedule that you treat as a full-time job. Your dedicated period should absolutely be dedicated. You cannot lollygag. It will not help you. You have to stay focused on what you need to get done. You have to minimize any possible distractions from outside, whether it's friends or family. You have to explain to them that you're grinding for your future and the ability to help them in the future as well. And maintain that strict study schedule for at least a 3-week to 4-week period. Going over your incorrects and making sure that each time you do test, you test in test-like conditions with a timer. This will set you up for success. I also want to mention, if you notice any areas where you're weak, especially in your content review, don't ignore them. I'm going to say it again, don't ignore your weaknesses. A lot of us fall into the trap of focusing on our strengths and what we feel very comfortable in and ignoring your weaknesses. For example, one of mine is biostats. I had to go learn biostats. And I think taking the time out to really focus on that helped me out a lot in reducing my anxiety when I did see biostat questions. The same thing also applies for me with immunology. I had to go over and spend lots more time in that, reviewing those information over and over again, and then seeing that translate in the end to my final scores and seeing an improvement in my scores. Because for the things that you do know, you know very well. And for the ones that you don't know, trust me, you got to refresh them. Finally, I will always be an advocate for having some sort of physical fitness regimen added into your study schedule. If you spend 12 hours a day, 10 hours a day, whatever it is, studying, I don't think it's just good enough to go right to bed and sleep. Please take a walk. If you don't want to lift weights, take a 30-minute walk around your neighborhood or at the school gym on a treadmill. If you do want to lift weights, lift some weights and just get the blood flowing. Get your body feeling pumped. It will help you out so much in the long run. And for me, it gave me something to always look forward to every time I was done studying. I would go out and I would lift weights, and afterwards I would run and I would sweat it all out. And by the time I'm going home, that heaviness that you feel in your head, gone. Because now your body's hurting. But it's a good kind of pain. We love that pain. Lastly, I want to mention the importance of eating well and also trying to maintain your mental fortitude. You have to believe you're going to pass. You have to eat healthy when you can. So I believed in meal prepping, and I meal prepped so that way I didn't have to wake up and think about what to eat. I was only focused on rationing my meals the night before, and in the morning I would be up and ready, make my cup of coffee, and I'd be on campus again before 8 a.m. to study. And that took away lots of decision fatigue because all I had to do was focus on studying. If this helped you today, please hit that subscribe button and like this video and leave a comment. I'm looking forward to dropping a lot more information and tips that helped me in my journey from MERS to Med. See you on the next one.